Night of the Radishes, Mexico. It's one of Mexico's most unusual but also strangely charming traditions. Every year, on December 23rd in the city of Oaxaca, giant radishes, some of them grown to monstrous, almost alien-looking sizes, are carved into elaborate art displays. Far from simple vegetable slicing, this is a full-scale cultural competition where the radishes are transformed into miniature worlds, churches, animals, historic scenes, and even lifelike human figures. What makes this tradition so bizarre is that radishes aren't exactly the most durable art medium. Within hours of carving, the vegetables begin to wilt, crack, and lose their bright color. Yet, this fleeting quality is part of the appeal. Each year, artists spend hours crafting incredible detail into sculptures that are destined to vanish almost immediately. Its beauty mixed with impermanence, like the vegetable version of a sand mandala. The origins go back to the colonial era in the 16th century, when Spanish settlers encouraged the growing of radishes. Farmers eventually discovered that unusually large ones, contorted in odd shapes, drew attention at market stalls. Over time, people started carving them to attract buyers, which evolved into a citywide event. By the late 1800s, Oaxaca officially embraced it as a public festival, and the competition has been growing ever since. At first glance, the Night of the Radishes might seem light-hearted or even silly, vegetables parading as art. But at a deeper level, it touches on themes of creativity, community, and the acceptance that beauty is temporary. Thousands now gather to witness this one-night-only gallery of edible oddities, all knowing that by morning, the sculptures will be nothing more than shriveled produce. It is perhaps one of the world's most peculiar reminders that even in the strangest forms, art, like life itself, doesn't last forever. Cheese rolling at Cooper's Hill, England. Every spring in the English countryside of Gloucestershire, hundreds of spectators gather on the steep grassy slope of Cooper's Hill for one of the quirkiest traditions still alive today, the cheese rolling festival. At first glance, it sounds harmless. A wheel of cheese is rolled down the hill, and competitors chase after it. In practice, it's complete chaos. The hill itself is alarmingly steep, nearly impossible to run down without falling. So most participants spend more time tumbling and cartwheeling than actually running. Injuries aren't just common, they are practically guaranteed. Broken bones, sprains, and concussions are almost as much a part of the tradition as the cheese itself. Yet year after year, locals and adventurous tourists line up at the top, all for the chance to claim glory and about 8 pounds of double Gloucester cheese. The origins of this odd competition stretch back centuries, with records of the event appearing as early as the 1800s, though locals argue it may date to pagan times as a ritual celebrating fertility or marking seasonal change. Over the years, it has grown into both a community celebration and a worldwide spectacle, drawing contestants from every corner of the globe. Winners are cheered like minor heroes, their reward almost comically disproportionate to the physical punishment endured. What makes this tradition so bizarre is the mix of slapstick humor and outright danger. To onlookers, it often looks like a live-action cartoon, with bodies bouncing and rolling like rag dolls. But beneath the entertainment lies something strangely enduring about human nature, the willingness to risk everything, even personal safety, for a fleeting moment of triumph and tradition. The Cooper's Hill cheese race is both ridiculous and deadly serious, proving that, in England at least, some people will literally chase after cheese. Polterabend, Germany. In Germany, the days leading up to a wedding aren't only about rehearsals and celebrations. They are also about deliberate destruction. Known as Polterabend, this tradition involves friends, family, and even neighbors gathering on the night before the ceremony to smash porcelain plates, cups, tiles, or other breakable objects into a chaotic heap outside the bride's house. On paper, it sounds like wanton vandalism, but in reality, it's steeped in symbolism. The act of breaking things is said to bring luck, driving away evil spirits and bad omens that might otherwise shadow the marriage. The crash of porcelain is considered especially powerful, while glass objects are avoided, since broken glass is thought to bring misfortune instead. And the event always follows with an unusual twist. After everyone has had their fun creating the mess, the bride and groom are expected to clean it up together. That cleanup isn't just about tidying the doorstep for the neighbors, it's a ritual of teamwork. Struggling with a broom and shovel side by side symbolizes the couple's ability to face challenges as a unit, turning a mountain of broken plates into a metaphor for shared resilience. The laughter, noise, and sheer absurdity of smashing priceless china just before the most elegant day of the couple's lives makes Polterabend one of the strangest wedding customs still alive today. What makes this tradition bizarre isn't only the destruction, but the resilience hidden within it. Guests gleefully take part in breaking things, leaving chaos in their wake, while the bride and groom must shoulder the responsibility to restore order. Like many unusual traditions, It's light-hearted and festive on the surface, but just beneath lies a deeper reminder that marriage, much like sweeping up broken porcelain, is messy, noisy, and a lot of work, but worth it in the end. Monkey Buffet Festival, Thailand. Every November in the town of Lopburi, Thailand, an unusual celebration takes place that looks less like a festival and more like the set of a primate-themed party gone completely off the rails. It's called the Monkey Buffet Festival, and as the name suggests, the main guests of honor aren't people at all. They are monkeys. Specifically, the long-tailed macaques that roam the city. The event begins with locals and volunteers laying out a massive buffet across tables, temple steps, and even elaborate displays. We're talking thousands of kilograms of food, fresh fruit, vegetables, candy, and even bottles of soda. Once everything is arranged, the horde descends. Hundreds of monkeys swarm over the offering, grabbing bananas in both hands, stuffing watermelons into their mouths, and occasionally fighting over sweets. The experience is equal parts hilarious and slightly unsettling, as monkeys clamber across statues, cars, and sometimes right over the festival goers themselves. On the surface, this looks like a quirky tourist attraction, but there's more to it. The monkeys of Lopburi are considered symbols of good fortune and are tied to local legends that date back centuries. By feeding them, the community believes they are inviting good luck and prosperity while also thanking the animals for helping draw visitors from all over the world. Today, international tourists flock to watch the spectacle, snapping photos of monkeys sipping from straws or snatching candy bars straight off the table. What makes the Monkey Buffet Festival so bizarre is the sheer reversal of roles. The humans are not the guests here, the monkeys are, and they aren't exactly polite about table manners. Yet in the chaos of spilled fruit, overturned trays, and screeching macaques, there's a joyful energy that keeps the tradition alive. It's one of the rare festivals where locals openly acknowledge that sometimes it's okay if society goes a little bananas. Camel wrestling, Turkey. In the Aegean region of Turkey, an ancient spectacle unfolds every winter that surprises many outsiders: camel wrestling. Yes, you heard that right. Fully grown, 2,000-pound camels squaring off in dusty arenas while entire towns gather to watch. The setup is straightforward but dramatic. Two large male camels, usually in mating season, are led into the ring. With their natural rivalries stirred, they lock necks, push with their massive bodies, and attempt to topple one another. Sometimes it's over quickly, with one camel backing down. Other times it becomes a drawn-out contest of brute strength, trumpeting bellows, and clashing jaws. The winner is usually declared when one camel forces the other to flee. Though strange to modern audiences, this tradition has deep cultural roots, dating back more than 2,400 years to nomadic tribes across Central Asia. Farmers and herders would use wrestling matches both as entertainment and as a way to display the strength and breeding value of their camels. Today, the events have evolved into communal festivals that attract locals and tourists alike. Entire towns join in, with music, dancing, and feasting before the matches begin. What makes camel wrestling controversial and so bizarre is the uncomfortable blend of cultural heritage and animal welfare concerns. Organizers emphasize that the animals are rarely allowed to injure each other seriously, and there are strict rules to keep the matches controlled. Still, footage of camels grappling and being cheered on like gladiators can feel unsettling to outside viewers. But despite debate, camel wrestling endures, cherished by locals as a link to their history. For them, it isn't about cruelty, it's about celebrating tradition, strength, and community. To outsiders, though, it remains a surreal scene. A roaring crowd gathered not for football or boxing, but for the thunderous clash of two colossal camels, locked in combat under the Turkish sun. Uphelliaa torch tossing, Scotland. Every winter, in the Shetland Islands of Scotland, nightfall ignites into one of the most dramatic spectacles in the world. Uphelliaa, a modern Viking fire festival that transforms this quiet coastal town into a scene straight out of Norse mythology. The tradition is more than 100 years old, but it feels ancient. Hundreds of participants, dressed in painstakingly crafted Viking costumes complete with helmets and axes, march through the streets carrying enormous wooden torches. At their center is a grand, hand-built Viking longship, a replica worthy of a saga. Chanting and singing, the torchbearers parade until the moment of climax, when, with a roar, the crowd hurls their flaming torches into the ship. Within minutes, the great vessel is engulfed in flames, lighting up the winter night as if the ancient gods themselves have returned to claim it. Uphelliaa was born in the late 19th century, when locals sought a way to celebrate their Norse heritage and bring cheer to the harsh winter months. Over time, it evolved into a full-scale community event, blending historical reverence with sheer spectacle. Today, the festival is tightly organized and filled with music, feasts, and camaraderie, but it's the fiery finale that remains its centerpiece, an awe-inspiring moment witnessed by thousands. To an outsider, the scene can look almost apocalyptic, a ship ablaze, a mob of costumed Vikings shouting triumphantly amidst the fire. But beneath the spectacle lies something deeply communal. The destruction of the ship symbolizes both farewell and renewal, casting away the old year in flames to welcome the new. It's bizarre. Yes, where else would people gather to joyfully torch a handcrafted longship? But also beautifully symbolic. In the end, Uphelliaa is less about destruction and more about unity. The fire binds the community together, paying tribute to heritage while wowing the world with theatrical chaos. Kanemaru Matsuri, Japan. Every spring in Kawasaki, Japan, thousands of people gather for one of the world's most unusual festivals, where the streets are filled with bright decorations, cheerful parades, and giant phalluses. This is the Kanemaru Matsuri, sometimes called the Festival of the Steel Phallus, and to an outsider it might feel more like parody than tradition. But for locals, it's deeply cultural, symbolic, and surprisingly wholesome. At the center of the event is a towering steel phallus statue carried through the streets, while smaller, colorful versions decorate floats and stalls. Vendors sell everything from lollipops shaped like the theme to souvenirs and artwork. What at first glance seems like pure shock value is actually tied to centuries-old beliefs about fertility, health, and protection. The origins date back to the 17th century, when sex workers in Kawasaki prayed at a local shrine dedicated to safe childbirth and protection against disease. Over time, the phallus became a symbol of not only fertility but also warding off illness and fostering good fortune. The modern festival also funds efforts to raise awareness about sexual health and HIV prevention, making it a rare fusion of humor, tradition, and public health advocacy. What makes this festival bizarre is less the presence of the phallus, though admittedly, watching an enormous pink sculpture paraded down city streets is unforgettable, and more the stark contrast in how it's celebrated. Children attend with their families, elders laugh alongside young people, and everyone treats the unusual imagery as part of innocent joy and vibrant community gathering. Seen through an outsider's lens, it may provoke giggles or disbelief. But for participants, Kanemaru Matsuri is living proof that even the strangest-looking traditions can carry remarkably positive messages of unity, health, and celebration. If nothing else, it's a reminder that culture isn't always meant to be solemn. Sometimes, it's just meant to be proudly and playfully human. Hajuka grasshopper fights, Mexico. In parts of rural Mexico, an unusual and oddly controversial pastime has persisted for generations. Grasshopper fighting, locally known as Hajuka. At first glance, it may seem absurd, or even like a children's prank. But for some communities, it remains a curious form of entertainment and competition. The premise is simple but bizarre. Locals capture grasshoppers, often picking them for size and agility, and then tie a fine thread gently around each insect's body to keep them in the ring. The opponents are placed facing one another, and with a little coaxing, the tiny gladiators begin to kick, grapple, and sometimes even tear at each other with their spiny legs. A miniature insect duel unfolds while spectators cheer and place wagers. The practice has been recorded for centuries, stretching back to indigenous traditions where insects were not only food but also symbols in folklore. Unlike cockfighting or bullfighting, grasshopper matches rarely cause serious injury to the animals. They are more of a symbolic contest of pride and amusement. But the sight of grown adults surrounding a table, chanting for insects to kick each other, is nothing short of surreal to the outsider's eye. What makes Hajuka so bizarre is the contrast between its playful appearance and its unsettling undertone. On one hand, it's treated as innocent, almost comical family entertainment. On the other, it carries the uneasy question of why humans are so drawn to staging battles, even at the level of insects. For locals, it's a quirky echo of heritage. For visitors, it's a story they'll retell again and again with a bewildered shake of the head. Ultimately, Hajuka grasshopper fights aren't about violence. They're about identity, tradition, and the peculiar ways cultures express competitiveness. Yet the next time you see a grasshopper hopping carefree in a field, you might wonder if, somewhere in Mexico, its cousin is being cheered on in the strangest arena imaginable. Thaipusam piercing ritual, Malaysia or India. Every year, during the Hindu festival of Thaipusam, streets in Malaysia, Singapore, and parts of India transform into breathtaking, and for outsiders, almost shocking, parades of devotion. Thousands of worshippers gather to pay tribute to Lord Murugan, the Hindu god of war, through rituals of endurance and sacrifice. The atmosphere blends booming drums, vibrant colors, and incense with a striking centerpiece, devotees who pierce their bodies with sharp objects as acts of penance and faith. The forms of piercing vary, and they are not subtle. Some drive long skews through their cheeks or tongues. Others attach hooks to their backs, suspending decorations, or even dragging heavy carts behind them. Perhaps most iconic are the kavadi bearers, devotees carrying towering, ornate metal structures attached directly to their bodies by spears and spikes. To the uninitiated, it looks like an ordeal of excruciating pain. Yet many participants enter deep states of trance, seeming to experience little suffering as they fulfill their vows. The origins of Thaipusam stretch back centuries, rooted in acts of devotion and gratitude. Participants often undertake the piercings as repayment for answered prayers, or as offerings to request blessings. It is a festival of purification through pain, a reminder of both human endurance and unwavering commitment to the divine. For families and communities, it is not a spectacle of horror, but of triumph, watching loved ones transcend suffering in the name of faith. What makes Thaipusam bizarre for outsiders is the vast gulf between perception and meaning. Where some see ritualized torment, devotees see devotion elevated to physical transcendence. The noise, the color, and the courage create an atmosphere that is less disturbing than it is humbling. Dani tribe finger-cutting mourning, Indonesia. In the highlands of Papua, Indonesia, the Dani tribe has a grieving ritual that is not only unusual but deeply haunting. When a family member dies, especially someone of great importance, it was once common for women in the Dani community to cut off parts of their own fingers as a physical expression of mourning. The act itself is as shocking as it sounds. Using sharp tools, small portions of a woman's fingers are amputated, usually at the top joints, in order to symbolize the emotional pain of loss in a permanent, physical form. The severed piece is typically burned or buried alongside the deceased as a gesture of unity, binding the mourner's life force with that of the departed. The resulting shortened fingers serve as a lifelong reminder of grief carried openly on the body. Anthropologists suggest the origins of this practice lie in the belief that intense sorrow interrupts spiritual balance, and that the ritual release of both blood and flesh helps rid the survivor of torment. By literally cutting away pain, the mourner could move forward, while also proving loyalty to family ties. For the Dani, finger amputation was less an act of self-destruction and more a symbol of profound respect and love. Today, the Indonesian government has largely outlawed the ritual, and it has become rare among younger generations. Still, many elder Dani women can be identified instantly by their shortened, scarred hands, each missing finger a silent testimony to lives they loved and lost. What makes this tradition so disturbing isn't only the act itself, but also its permanence. Where most cultures mourn with time-limited rituals, a wake, a memorial, a period of wearing black, the Dani placed grief directly onto the body, carved in flesh forever. It's a reminder that love, loss, and tradition often leave marks far deeper than the eye can see. Baby Jumping Festival, Spain. Every summer, in the small Spanish village of Castrillo de Murcia, an event takes place that feels like it wandered out of a surreal painting. Known as El Colacho, or the Baby Jumping Festival, it involves men dressed as devils sprinting through the streets, leaping over rows of real infants lying on mattresses. Yes, actual babies. The sight is almost impossible to process at first. Costumed figures in bright yellow suits, masked and wielding whips, hurling themselves over scattered newborns while villagers cheer. To the outsider, it can look like a terrifying game of chance, one mistimed jump away from disaster. Yet within the community, it's seen not as reckless, but as sacred. The ritual dates back to the early 1600s and is tied to Catholic traditions blended with local folklore. The devil figure represents evil itself, and by leaping over the children, is believed to absorb sin, disease, and misfortune, leaving the babies purified and protected. Priests and families gather to bless the occasion, and despite its dangerous appearance, there are no recorded incidents of children being harmed, a fact that likely keeps the festival alive to this day. What makes El Colacho so bizarre is the collision of imagery. Innocent infants, usually symbols of vulnerability and safety, juxtaposed with a devil-costumed man hurling his body above them. To onlookers, it appears terrifying, even reckless. But to villagers, it is a joyful mix of faith, folklore, and tradition, a ritual that blesses their children and strengthens community ties. Like many festivals on this list, it lives in the space between bizarre spectacle and meaningful symbolism. Outsiders recoil, locals rejoice. And for every leap, El Colacho reminds us that sometimes traditions survive not because they make sense, but because they bind a community in ways that defy explanation. Baby Tossing Ritual, India. High above the bustling villages of southern India, a ritual has taken place for centuries that continues to shock the outside world to this day. Known simply as the baby tossing ceremony, it involves infants, some just a few months old, being carried to the rooftop of a temple, raised before the gods, and then dropped nearly 30 feet into the air. Below, a group of men wait with large outstretched sheets, their arms tense as drums pound and villagers cheer. The bundle of cloth creaks under the weight as the baby lands safely, and moments later the child is lifted high and celebrated as blessed. For the community, this ritual is not an act of recklessness, but a profound gesture of faith, believed to bring good fortune, health, and protection upon the child. The origins stretch back hundreds of years, with both Hindu and Muslim families in some regions once practicing the ritual as an offering to the divine. Though modern authorities have attempted to ban it numerous times, passionate locals preserve it as an act of tradition, insisting that precautions ensure a child's safety. Today, it still takes place in rural villages, witnessed by both horrified visitors and proud families who see it as an essential rite of passage. What makes this ritual so disturbing is the instinctive reaction it provokes. Unlike festivals of food, music, or even pain, this involves the most universally fragile symbol of human life, babies. To see them lifted high, then tossed from a temple roof, sparks disbelief and even terror in outsiders. Yet within the community, it is an expression of trust in both divine power and communal solidarity. As with our entire journey through bizarre traditions, the baby tossing ritual reminds us of how differently cultures interpret faith, devotion, and protection. For some, it is unthinkable. For others, it is sacred. And in the moment a child falls from the rooftop into waiting hands, this ancient practice leaves us with a kind of visceral disbelief that ensures it will never be forgotten.